So hi, we're group 13, and based on the title of this video, you may or may not have guessed that today we're going to discuss to you proving, specifically proving involving angles formed by transversal. So this is the problem that was assigned to us, and given that lines A, B, and E are parallel, and lines B and C are parallel, we're supposed to prove that the meshes of angles 3 and 11 are equal. First, let's start with mentioning a few concepts necessary for the proof. The first one is parallel alternate interior theorem, or PIAT, which states if two parallel angles are cut by a transversal, then any pairs of alternate interior angles are congruent. So if lines A and B are parallel and C is a transversal, then the meshes of angles 1 and 5 are equal, and 3 and 6 are equal. Next is the parallel corresponding angle postulate, or the PCAP, which states if two parallel angles are cut by a transversal, then any pairs of corresponding angles are congruent. So if lines A and B are parallel and C is transversal, then the meshes of angles 2 and 6 are equal and the meshes of angles 3 and 8 are equal. The third is the transitive property of equality. If one value is equal to another value, then the first value is equal to the third value. So, if A is equal to B and B is equal to C, then A is also equal to C. The last one is the definition of congruent angles. Two angles are congruent if and only if they have the same measurement or have the same angle, either in degrees or in radians. So in this example, only angles B and C are congruent because only they have the same measurement. Now we can start proving, but before that, may I suggest that you refer to this problem every now and then to avoid confusion. So we start off with our given, which is that lines A, B, and E are parallel, and lines B and C are parallel. And then we write our first statement, which is that angles 3 and 5 are congruent. That's because of the parallel alternate interior angle theorem. Then we write that the meshes of angles 3 and 5 are equal because angles 3 and 5 are congruent. Then we write another statement indicating that angles 5 and 8 are congruent. That's because of the parallel corresponding angle postulate. And under that, we explain that the measurements of angles 5 and 8 are equal because angles 5 and 8 are congruent angles. Next, we write how angles 8 and 11 are congruent, and that's also because of the parallel corresponding angle postulate. And again, under that, we explain how the measurements of angles 8 and 11 are equal, and that's also because 8 and 11 are congruent angles. So they're basically just all the same except with different angles. And now we link all of them to one statement, which I'll show in the next part of the video. So here's the statement. If angles 3 and 5 are congruent and angles 5 and 8 are congruent, then angles 3 and 8 are congruent. That's because of the transitive property. And under that, we put that if angles 3 and 8 are congruent and angles 8 and 11 are congruent, then angles 3 and 11 are congruent. And that's also because of the transitive property. And then we end with saying how the measurements of angles 3 and 11 are equal. And that's because angles 3 and 11 are congruent angles. Well, that's all for today. Thanks for watching.